Hello War of the Visions players, I'm Jackie Fox, and at the request of one of my commenters after doing the Elemental tier list, I'm going to be adding to that all of the job-based VC types. Because, and I agree with this statement, Rainbow is getting a bit ambiguous, because Rainbow can mean a lot of things. And there's some very, very, very good Rainbow teams at the moment, and then there's some, like, worse than everything else Rainbow teams at the moment. And then there's stuff that just isn't even trying and isn't even going to make this list. And then there's some stuff that seems like it isn't even trying, but actually works really well. And we're going to sort all of that out today. And first we're going to observe that alongside lightning, but probably even stronger than the element of lightning itself, like the very tippity top of the power level of the meta right now, is almost certainly Fist and Red Mage. Now I think Red Mage is actually stronger for a number of reasons, but let's go with Fist first and you'll see the differences. We have 8 vision cards as well as 1 coming in the future. Not necessarily the best future VC for Fist, but it has really what it needs. And especially with the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration, one of those cards being free, you're getting agility, unit resistance, strike attack, crit damage, crit rate, and attack up. All very powerful for the types of units that are using strike now. Also, Elias card, strike resistance, area resistance, acquired AP. We have 3 area resistance cards with that, 2 agility cards. It's a very fast team, 1 unit resistance card, so it can really stack the modern defenses, and also physical man killer. Just a lot of good things here. This was one of the first job types to really get set in terms of VCs. It got a great set to begin with. It's been a contender for quite some time, and is definitely one to continue to keep an eye on, but Alaya the Alabaster really brought it together. But we also have even, this is one of the ones where you have the most top tier units for one job, I think. Because you've got Alaya the Alabaster is obviously great, but Perrine is also very powerful. Alphonse can be a dominating tank and also just a great lightning companion for Alaya the Alabaster. Also countering a lot of the things that counter other strike units, or especially the strong ones. You've got Edward, and then countering other strike units, other lightning strike teams, you've got Uriel, and if we were ever to get Pixel Remaster, we would also have a very powerful tank in Snow. So just a lot of really great units here, great vision cards, not necessarily as many as some other groups, but I think, you know, just like she's pulling the element lightning ahead, I think Alaya is really pulling this job type ahead as well. And it really had a head start on everybody else. It didn't need a lot to get it up there, but it got it. So here we are. But next, that means we're going to talk about the Red Mage sword type. Now, as this is one of the sword classes, it has access to just the biggest pool of weapons possible. There's so many different types of swords, so many options to play with. The Legendary Reliquary's sword is also really freaking good. Now, one of the downsides for Red Mages is no agility cards, no unit resistance cards, 3 area resistance cards, and a lot of different defensive options. But we've also got a number of offensive options. We've got some kind of smatterings of evasion. We've got, you know, all sorts of different ways that you could go with this. And also a number of really good units. Now, the really core combination here is going to be Summer Glaciella and Ferris. Summer Glaciella is going to be turning down the physical damage, and Ferris is going to be healing back up. These two are practically an unbeatable combo. I say practically because things are going to get there. Lightning can do it. There's a lot of things that can do it. But just, they're stacking so many advantages and so much roll compression and new just capabilities. They're really great together. And they would also be amazing behind either Howlett or Reagan, because think about it, there's a lot of fire physical teams that are going to get absolutely fucking trashed by Summer Glaciella and Ferris together that would love to target a unit like Howlett or Reagan. They're going to try to go after those, and you can punish them super hard for it without losing advantage by running a full Red Mage team. There's just so many really good options for this. There's also a lot of other good units. I mean, there's there's some really quality units here. We've got Sylvie. I know she doesn't have a 140 yet. Elena's a little bit dated. So is Dwayne and Charlotte, but they're all great. I mean, they've gotten better recently. Charlotte, with her limit burst, finally getting like a threshold heal is really great because so many people have her. I know she doesn't see a lot of use at the top tier, but once you get past the top 100, everybody has Charlotte. It's really weird. There are a lot of Charlotte players. And she got some respect, so she's going to work on teams. But also, I think if you're going for mono water elemental, you're probably running Miranda as your third choice. She's pretty excellent. But I really think that running like one of the ice units and two of the water units is probably one of the best ways to go, especially Guild Wars defense. Incredible Red Mage team. But really, this thing's kicking ass, and like it's even got good penetrations because it's got Sildra in here as well, so slash penetration, magical man killer, physical man killer, just a lot of ways to pump up its offense. Also chain resistance, slash resistance, all magic resistance, all of the resistances, missile resistance, lots of it. Just slash resistance, strike resistance, little bit of everything. But really seems to be focused pretty heavily into slash, although also when we're looking at the future VCs, it looks like we're going to be getting a bit of pierce attack, like a pierce attack combo set, which, sure. I mean, actually Red Mages do have a piercing attack, but it's not super relevant. It's a chaining attack. It does also now break re-raise, but not the greatest thing, and really not worth equipping 2 vision cards for, but I guess that is synergy. And then moving on into A tier, first I want to address Rainbow. And what Rainbow means in this video, even though it's in exactly the same place as the last video, is a bit different. And in this, I mean specifically running Alaya with Glaciella, because it's, I mean, you can throw a second lightning unit, a second water unit on that team, but there's no elemental synergy between those two units. There's no job-based synergy between those two units. It is purely built on the back of the fact that they are the 2 strongest units in the game, and they are in differing roles. So you have the strongest tank, strongest DPS. All you really need is someone who can heal them, and you've got a fucking team. There are no like hard criteria here, except for the fact that you have to have pulled some of the newest units that came out like back to back with each other. A little bit whaley, but it's kind of like that just new age value team that doesn't make any sense but works really well. I would say that is arguably A tier. It's really the only team like that that's going to do any good, but it's so good, it's almost S tier itself. So, like, just off the back of that little rainbow, that's basically, just remember that's the 2 of those units together in another. But with that being said, from there, it is quite a significant drop off until we get to the next units. Because while we have some S tier quality in Red Mage and Fist, you really have to drop down behind most of the elements in terms of consistency. Because like B tier is very consistent. S and A are super powerful and can beat most things. If it isn't another S or A tier team, it's probably getting whooped by an S or A tier team. B can beat certain S or A tier teams, but not all of them. But all 3 of these, I think what they counter is so popular that they're always going to have stuff to eat. They may not be the best teams, but you know, they're never going to go hungry either. So they're remarkably consistent and very easy to score points with, even though they're not the best in the game right now. Which I think also gives them a lot of potential to become best in the game with just an update or 2. And then you have Ice and Fire, which, I mean, they've had some modern releases, but they've been a little bit more of a miss. No big bangers for Fire and Ice, even though they've got a number of units recently. I mean, I think the most impactful recent Fire unit, Soul's pretty cool. Soul is going to be impactful, but at the same time coming out after Alaya and Glaciella, and I don't think he's going to be as impactful as either of them overall, but still a pretty cool unit. And also Yuffie, who is probably just still the best evasion unit, in that she's probably the highest evasion unit that also has sure hit avoidance, so she's really the best of both worlds in a way that a lot of evasion units aren't. But from there we get into another sword class. So this has some of the same advantages of the other sword classes that I was talking about, but looking at knights, they're gonna have just pick of the litter in terms of swords. There's a lot of great swords for these guys. A lot of these units actually have their own custom swords. As a matter of fact, Lightning has 2. Strange as it is. Also, just a really incredible team here. You have super powerful DPS units. You have both the most powerful DPS in Earth and the most powerful DPS in Light in Stern and King Bradley. You also have the newest Lightning unit, and I know he was just a little bit underwhelming for some people as a 100 cost unit. Maybe he feels a little bit more like a 90 cost unit. But that Honeycomb Barrier is actually going to be pretty helpful for these other DPS style units. And again, I hate to bring Pixel Remaster back into this, but should we get Pixel Remaster, Lightning is going to be a hell of a unit on this team as well. And, you know, there's some other decent options here. We have some good tanks among this order, and we have some good options. Okay, there could be better magic in here. This is going to be a largely physical team, but you could run someone like Celeste. I know she's flagging a bit, and that would definitely give you good resistances against magic, and maybe in a way that people aren't expecting. Also, Engelbert is a really sturdy physical tank, physical being more of the meta right now. That might be more reliable for you. Something like Engelbert, Winged Stern, and King Bradley would be just a really powerful combo against physical, because it would, you know, both of those units are going to take people out rather quickly, and Engelbert's not going anywhere fast, so he might actually stick around long enough that you can wipe their team with your DPSs. Just pretty good. The downside here, though, is that there's only 5 cards at the moment. One of the cards is stuck in limbo, and one of them is coming in about a month. The cards are pretty good though. 2 agility cards, always a thing that I love to see. There's also an attack card, and like I said, this is a very physical, also physical man killer, so a lot of ways to increase your physical damage. Slash attack card coming in the future. Again, this is a slash type job, so that's great. Luck and agility, you know, there's not a lot of evasion here, unfortunately, so not really benefiting too much from the luck and agility card necessarily. That really feels like an evasion specific card, and I mean, maybe there's some potential. I know Bradley and Winged Stern are going to like that. They're like quasi evasive, like maybe they can dodge something sometimes, and they're just going to like the agility in general. Also, the luck is going to increase their accuracy. They're both fairly accurate units. They're going to like that even if they're not evading. But maybe not the ideal card for this. So really it's the cards that's holding this back, but at the same time I would say that looking at the unit pool, at least for DPS, like while some of the other roles are definitely lacking, this has the DPS power, and I think that that's really important. Next to take a look at would be Katana. This is one that was actually quite powerful a little while ago. It hit 6 vision cards fairly quickly. It had a really powerful mascot unit in Sephiroth, biggest katana wielding boy. Also, super dank unit in Astrius. He has kind of faded a bit, and to a degree Sephiroth has as well, but he's still one of the better units in the game. Both of them are still excellent units. There is also some potential both for magic DPSs here to kind of mix things up, and also as support. I think Varush is a really good unit that often gets overlooked, and you know, typically when people are using him they're thinking more about the damage, but I think in this context on this type of team he could be a really excellent support that could still manage to do some damage, and also kind of off type damage that people aren't prepared for, in that he'll be dealing magical damage. I think he could be really effective, but also in a lot of the same ways without the support. I think that Sweetheart Miranda is also really powerful here. And let's face it, Laswell is just really good at deleting people for very low amounts of AP and even earning a lot of that AP back. So super AP efficient for someone who can blast some damage at people, but a little bit of an older unit. he's an 80 coster, so maybe not one of the best, but I would say he's one of the better ones on this list. A little bit limited in terms of the number of units, and it would be nice if they had a second agility card, but they definitely have enough cards to make this work. They still have some of the more powerful units in the game, but they are slipping from the position that they once were in. They were doing a bit better, but they could also be revitalized a bit fairly easily. Like they could return to their previous stature. Another little bit more of a has-been team here is also going to be Glove. Now, Glove had a lot more going for it when Roy Mustang and Summer Helena were better. When Kefka came out, that was really the height of their power. He's still one of the better Glove units, but also if you don't have him, you aren't going to be getting him anytime soon, and I'm still not super excited about him or his element, especially the way things are going right now with water being one of the stronger elements again. However, there are some really good free unit options here. If you built Renoa and Addison Rae, those are going to be a really great Glove combo together. If you have the BCs to make that happen, they're great. Also, 12 BCs here, that's twice as many as a PvP team needs. It's even 2 more than a PvE team needs, unless you're counting the companion unit, and you'll need those vision cards as companion, it's not you. So you only really need 10, they've got 12, that's excellent. That is one of the best things going for them. No unit resistance cards, but they do have a spread of area resistance and agility. You're probably going to be running those along with the other 2. A lot of options here. So I think really maybe the hardest part about running this particular job type is picking who to go with your free units. But, you know, I think there's a lot of potential for that and a lot of ways that you could potentially throw curveballs. But that being said, a lot of the units that made this particular type work as well as it did, and it was never really top tier in the past, they have kind of fallen off. With the exception of Kefka. Kefka's kind of hung in there, but still not the best unit and not one that I would really brag about. So, Glove is kind of meh at the moment. It has done better. And then after that, Greatsword. Greatsword, and look, part of the reason that I'm listing Greatsword highly is because there is going to be a new Astrius coming for Greatsword. It's a very powerful lightning Astrius coming for Greatsword. He's definitely going to be a strong unit. He's definitely going to be a powerful mascot for Greatswords. He's definitely going to be a part of, like, you know, Soul, I kind of waffle on factoring him into some of these equations until I see a little bit more of him in action. Lucio, I feel the same way about. Astrius and Lightning, oh yeah, no, that's great. I think that's going to be incredibly powerful, and maybe while it might not tilt the meta as much as some things have, that's probably for the best. But also, I do think it's going to be quite strong, and I think that that's going to be a real boon to this in the future. No unit resistance cards, but you have area and agility, both great. Physical man killer, crit rate, lots of resistances, accuracy, just a lot of good stuff here. Chain resistance, just mwah. But also pretty decent damage units. Unfortunately, the tanks could be a bit better. Esther really needs some revitalization. And a number of these units are a bit older, like Cloud. Ruinstern is okay. I've seen Ruinstern do really well for people who don't have, say, Sephiroth, but discount Sephiroth isn't necessarily a compliment either. Joom could be a good tank holding this thing together. Yeah, no, I think she could actually do it. But that does leave a little bit, like, I mean, I guess Hio is your third unit. And I guess if you run Hio up front, that's really going to catch some water teams off guard when there's an Astrius in there. Although, I think Summer Glaciala might be able to deal even with that Astrius, and he's a more physical unit. It's going to be a more physical team. I think she deals with physical of all stripes pretty well. So maybe that's not as great as it looks, but I still think it's worth talking about. You know, it's worth putting in a nice place on the list. The people who are not on the list yet, oh, there's nothing nice about what's coming. So let's move down to D tier. This is everything that I think is worse than wind. And for the record, I think that wind is the worst element out. So out of the 17 job types, only 6 of them are not worse than every other element. And again, there's wind teams that are going to be worse than these teams. Some of these teams that you could potentially build from these. But I think that wind has a lot more going for it in consistency. While you might be able to build a good team out of some of these weapon types that could beat some wind teams that you'll see, I just think that most wind teams are going to win more times than most of some of these job type teams. So the first one of these that I want to look at, the one that I think is probably the best out of this tier, the closest in power to where wind is Spear. And that's because we have some really interesting options here. Jaden in Ice and Dialdo are a really powerful duo. I think you need maybe a second DPS or something to do a little bit of healing here to really support that well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot, at least for the healing part. But there are other DPS units, Shadow Lynx on Ice, Glaciala Reform, although I'm not sure that she's as good outside of Wind. Kind of the same feeling for Oberon a little bit, but you know, he does synergize with Dialdo and he does break in all elements, so I guess that's not bad. Although he's maybe not the unit that I would love to see. Gernsback is new and pretty good, but he has a 70 cost, so he's not necessarily going to be a powerhouse, even though I do think he's a good unit and a little bit beneficial. There's definitely some unit attack resistance and potential to build high unit attack resistance here. That's going to be really, really bloody helpful with Dialdo. But there's a little bit of lacking area attack and agility. I think if they could get that in the future, they'd be doing quite good. At least for where they are on this list. Really, I'm finding it harder and harder to make arguments for the teams that find themselves here. But that being said, I think that Jaden and Dialdo would do pretty well. The issue with that, though, is that's a mostly magical team. There aren't a lot of magical spear cards. So that's a little bit unfortunate. But again, we're well below wind now, so don't expect a lot. I'm really giving you the best case scenario at this point because there's a lot of bad we could talk about instead. Next is going to be Ninja Blade, and Ninja Blade, I don't know. I think honestly that I'm rating this a little bit too high. Because when you look at the UR unit pool and it's only 5 units, you have a terrible selection. You only have 7 vision cards, which is technically enough, but 2 of them are magic cards, that's not great. But from the cards that you do have, from the other 5 physical cards, you get just about everything that you would want for a physically based evasion team, and that's really what Ninja Blade excels at. Unfortunately, that's not the best archetype. And it's easily countered by, you know, some careful planning in a lot of different elements. But at the same time, I think that there is potential to be a really aggravating team that you would have to build a little bit specifically to deal with. That being said, a lot of the units are a bit older. There's only 100 cost unit among them, that's Zazan, and it's been a while. People don't love Zazan. Now, I will be making a video about why I think Zazan's a little bit better than people assume, and why I think that Earth Evasion is better than people assume, but I don't think he's carrying this team, and I don't think that this is necessarily the archetype for that to work incredibly well with, although he could partner with Katana, because let's face it, lightning is still blind. 4th generation or not, still a blind element. You also have Yuffie. Yuffie is the most evasive unit that I can think of that also has sure hit avoidance. Sure hit avoidance is very important, but most of the units that get it already can't dodge, so sure hit is kind of the least of their worries. She is an excellent combination of the two. If you are also running, because we have 2 earth units, we also have 2 fire units here, so Sweetheart Ildira also has the ability to like AoE CT down, which is a large part of what makes Alaya, the new Alaya, really cool, even though Sweetheart Ildira does it in a much inferior way. It is still a similar strategy and it is still quite effective, especially with a fast team like ninjas. So despite the fact that, you know, there's only a few units here, there's only one clear play style, and there's barely enough vision cards, I think that these units are similar enough and do something that is potentially useful enough against enough different teams that there's a lot of potential here, and this is a good start. It just needs a little bit of help to bring it together, like a new Ninja Blade unit, maybe even a new Ninja Blade class or something like that, something to bring this all together, as well as maybe 1 or 2 new Ninja Blade vision cards to kind of fill this out, especially physical ones. And again, like an area attack resistance and agility card combined with Ninja Blade on it, that would do a lot to fix some of the deficits here. But considering that, I mean, I just like the playstyle and the units a lot, but really I think you could make an argument that this is an E-tier group a little bit more easily than some of the other things that I've advocated for so far. After that, I'm going to go down to the final sword group, which is Warrior. And I always get this one mixed up with Knight, because this is the really defensive one, and Knight is the one that's really offensive. There's a bunch of defensive units in here. There's also a bunch of evasive units in here, oddly enough. This is the defensive and evasive, hard to kill, I guess, folks, whereas the Knights do a lot of damage. And it feels like that's kind of the opposite, because you imagine a knight and they're wearing heavy armor and they've got breaks and they've got ways to build their defenses and stuff like that. It's just kind of the opposite of the way that you think it works. But looking at the best units that I can see here, I mean, Warrior of Light is a really stubborn tank, but I don't think he's particularly great. And then you have Bart, who is just really great as a damage unit, but also manages to have a lot of physical defense and ability to deal with that kind of stuff. King Mont is still a pretty solid tank, even though he's a bit old. His upgrades have been pretty good for him. Sorrow, while he's stuck at 120 and probably won't really ever get upgraded past that, he is a pretty good evasive unit and also has the potential to do quite a bit of damage. There are some other decent evasion units here. Violet is okay, but a bit dated. Not you, Halloween Fred. And Tidus, you've seen better days. Also, you kind of... Do you need Pixel? You do need Pixel Remaster to hit your full power, so you're kind of waiting on that. Also, another tank here with Freyevia. Not one of my favorite units, but it... she's also kind of a support, so like the only support to make this list, the only person who's going to be bringing people back to life, although I'm not sure that I'm excited for that, because there's a lot of defensive power, there's a lot of sustained power, but I think that that just makes this an annoying team to face. I don't think it actually wins fights. There's not enough damage here in my mind to win a fight. Just to, I don't know, stall, and not even well. So just bad from a unit pool perspective. 3 agility cards is overkill. I guess that could be worse. You could have none, but there are also no unit resistance and no area resistance cards. So really not the greatest card pool either. So kind of bad on both sides. The one upside here, the thing that is pulling this up a little bit higher than it potentially could be, is the fact that it is a sword job. So it has access to a really large pool of things. Also, especially for Bart's is probably the most DPS-y unit that could really benefit from this. But the Blood Sword is really beneficial. That's a really great legendary reliquaries sword that can be equipped by all of these units. so that's pretty cool too. But like, I'm really grasping at straws at this point to make Warrior worth it. They really need some help, both in units and VCs. So that's pretty rough, I would say. And then finally, and this is another one that I question whether it should be a little bit lower on this list, but after comparing it to similar job types, I want to put Devout at the bottom of D tier. And the reason is that I think it just edges out the rest of the casters. It has the most room to be splashed into other things. But really, this is also because, you would think that Black Mage would be the offensive and that Devout would be the defensive, as that's really how those classes play out. But the way that the job VC kind of groups play out is the opposite. You have a lot of good DPS units here. You have Soul, you have Omnilus. Renan, you're a thing, but you're not amazing. Black Witch Helena, you were the bomb back in the day, but not amazing now. Resnick, really, really, really good support, and glad to see you here, because with good offensive units like Soul and Omnilus, you really want somebody to keep them alive. Resnick really helps balance that out. There are some other good healers here too. You've got Minwu, Yuna. Shalza is interesting, but maybe not what brings us together. Also, we've got a good spread on the cards. Actually, the cards here are pretty good, and there's a good there's a good weapon pool, since it's probably the second largest weapon pool other than swords, so there's a lot of different staffs to choose from, which is a little bit beneficial. Unfortunately, there are also a number of physical cards in here, which is a little bit unfortunate, but I think it really works out for them. Also, I think it makes them more splashable onto other teams. It's not really the purview of this video, but that could make them work on certain teams that you may not expect, in a way that I think some of these others don't as much. Again, I would rather this be more offensive and have a defensive option, or splash in a defensive option from elsewhere, than have it be all defensive and have to get my DPS from elsewhere, which is, I think, what's going on with some of the other caster classes. But also, being that these are casters, this is a big issue versus Alaya. This is a big issue versus anyone who can cancel or deal lots of damage. It was already an issue dying while you're casting something, but now you can get your cast canceled from 3 different directions at once with Stag Impact, and that's really had a big impact on the caster meta. And it's pushed, I would say, all of the caster classes down maybe a tier, just because they have to worry about running into her. And none of them are doing particularly well anyways. There's kind of a confluence of things that's making things rough for them. But out of those 3 classes, Mace included, I would say that this one is the best, and we're going to see the rest of them in E tier. However, before we move on to E tier, I do want to mention F tier, and we're going to start with Book, because while I have some serious complaints for Book, and while I think that Book is really far behind a lot of the other classes and everybody we mentioned so far, that's why I jumped all the way down to F for them. I do think that they are, by a fairly wide margin, better than the other 2 classes that I'm going to include in here. But looking at Book, they only have 8 vision cards. 2 of them are coming in the future, so that's only 6 that are available for them. They're pretty purely magical, and one of those cards is physical, so really only 5 cards that work for them, but I guess that could be like a sub VC. That could be okay, not terrible. 1 unit resistance and 3 area resistance, that's pretty good. These are pretty bulky units, so that kind of fits into their ethos. But they're also kind of slow, and there's no agility cards here. That's a little bit unfortunate. They're not all the highest damage, but there is some damage boosting stuff here that could be good for them. 2 ways of getting magical boosts, 2 ways of getting magical man killer as well. So that's going to be helpful for some of these units, but there's only 5 of them. And while scholars especially do some really interesting things in PvE with their evocation skills, or calling, I think, maybe in Velas's case, whatever. With those skills, you know, the ability to increase evocation gauge can really be a game changer in a way that Spicy Donut is pioneering. Check out their channel if you're interested in how that works. But there's only there's basically 3 unique jobs here and 1. So like they need more jobs, they need more variety of units. They all kind of do the same thing in a way that's really similar to Ninja Blade, but also they don't necessarily get all of the things they need to do it, and what they do isn't really great. Building up your defenses, especially defense, is a little bit of an old school tactic and isn't as useful as it used to be, but also purely magical based DPS teams are not what they used to be either, so it's a little tough. Luckily, well, no, they actually do have some casting time issues as well. So this is actually the 4th caster class, and it gets bumped down a bit because of that as well. So welcome to F tier. You're the worst of the casting classes. Again, not because the units are bad, because I like a number of these. Velas particularly is really good. Also, I don't know why Halloween Lucia is like up front when she's only a 70 cost unit. Usually they've been putting the 70 costs at the back. So she's behind like I don't know why Velas isn't up front. Like, I don't think Ibarra. Well, okay, this is by a JP player, so Ibarra has the 140 over there. I guess Ibarra's getting a 140 soon for us, if not has already, and I just missed it. I don't know. I don't have her, so it's a little hard for me to keep up with that sometimes. But the next worst class, and this, again, like this is by a pretty big margin. Like it's really hard to show on a tier list that only goes to F how bad Gun is. Because if you listened to my recent little arena rant about why missile units are doing poorly, then you would know that in a lot of ways, like in terms of the technical drawbacks of different missile units, Gun gets it the worst. The redeeming quality of Gun is more or less everything else that you see. But they can shoot their allies in the back. They can get blocked from being able to do damage at range because of their allies. They're incredibly squishy, so if they can't do damage in range for like 1 turn, then that could just lose their window entirely to do damage during the fight, because it could force them to get in range to try to hit and then put them in range of someone else's damage, and squishy enough that they're going to go down pretty much in 1 hit in almost every case. There's not a lot of units here that have various forms of survivability, so they're incredibly one-hittable. Just a lot of issues here, and there was a time where a certain amount of range was could be on certain maps, situationally at times a big advantage for you. It's not anymore, because due to AoE increasing, skills like Stag Impact, again, I know I have to mention Stag Impact and Elia the Alabaster like 5 times a video anymore, but just the theoretical range on skills like that have really beat missile units at their own game, and you can't one-shot very easily. Elia the Alabaster, she is a beefy girl in a way that none of these units are. We also don't have Melnia, who's like clearly the best of them. Elia is having Elia the Gunner, Elia the original, Elia the Ice is really having some issues maintaining what she used to do. She's having some issues because Ice is having some issues, and just beyond all that, the idea of running a 3-gunner team is ludicrous. It's always been ludicrous. It has, I mean, typically people stop at 2 gunners and they put a tank so that people chase the tank, and that gives the gunners more time to pick people off. It helps maximize the advantage that they have because of range. So a team like Snow, Eliza, and Elia was really good for Ice for the longest time for this reason, but even though that was probably the most premium missile team that I can think of in recent history, A, it wasn't even a 2-gunner team, but B, it didn't improve by replacing Snow with a third missile unit, much less a third gunner. And I think that these teams are going to have the same problem, and I think that's also an issue that Bo is going to have as well. However, when you see Bo, you're going to see why Bo gets ranked even lower than this, because, I mean, you do have 8 vision cards, you do have a decent spread, unit resistance 1, area attack 2, although the unit resistance and the agility are coming in the future, unfortunately. Neither of those are here now. You just have 2 area resistance. That's going to help keep them safe from range, but not safe enough. And a lot of people also have 2 area resistance cards. It's not even special. So, just for so many reasons outside of what you see here, this is the second worst grouping in the game. But the worst grouping in the game, and this isn't even, like, the margins here, there just aren't margins here. Like, this group is fucked. I don't know, like, Hiroki executives, developers, did somebody shoot your girl with an arrow and you're just mad at the idea of archers from now on? Because, like, there were some advantages to archers, you know, being able to shoot over things, being able to shoot into valleys, being able to shoot up onto hills, limited ability, but, like, they don't shoot flat like gunners. They were the best technically in a lot of ways ranged units. Typically gunners got a little bit more power in some respects, but there were definitely times when in this game's meta where bow units were some of the scariest things. But usually as a one-off, you've got a bow unit picking you off from impunity while you chase the rest of the team. That's the kind of thing. There's not going to be a 3 bow unit team, and there's definitely not going to be a 3 bow unit team when we only currently have 4 VCs. Luckily, the 5th VC coming in the future at some point, this one got delayed, is free and free buildable, but it's also not really the best bow card in the world. It's just a 5th. So, I mean, for one, to even build a team, they need more cards coming in the future. Like, even in the future, they won't have enough cards to build a full PvE team. The only thing to really write home about here is that one of these is an agility card. It's also incredibly limited and a magic card that's not going to be seen rerun. So it's not the best for them to begin with, and it's not something you're going to be able to get your hands on. Also, well, actually, from the looks of this, all of these cards are limited, and even the free card is probably going to be pretty limited. So, good luck getting your hands on any of these cards if you don't have them right now. Good luck getting your hands on these cards in the future. The only card that I actually think is good here, that would be even worth getting, is Irvine's card, and that's mainly because it is a gunner bow card, but, like, given how much bow has been shit on, I think waiting for that combination to pay off, I'm hoping that Gumi makes another set of those so that maybe I can make a job-based version of something similar to the Eliza Snow team again. Maybe in the future could be a thing, but really I think you need, like, the unit pools are just so limited here that you need a bow user, a gunner, and somebody else to actually make it work. I mean, look at the unit pool. That's the other problem here. It's not quite as bad as the VC pool. That's definitely the worst part for bow units. But, I mean, arguably the best unit is Setia. Well, that's real unfortunate because she wasn't even the best Crystal Warrior when she came out. And she was like the second one to come out. So that's real fucked. She was already like not favorite to Joom. And then Velas came out, and even though he was a little bit of a sleeper hit, he's still way more popular than her, and then all over more popular than her is Astrius. And, like, we're going into the third set of that type of Warrior of the Crystals thing. Ashes of the Apocalypse or something in JP, that should be coming soon. She's just really outdated. I love Eliza, but I even like Eliza more than Elia sometimes, but at the same time, just, you're not enough to carry this. Winter Victoria. Corwell is fucking pathetic. Niblu is unfortunate because she just gets too close to people to begin with. She's never really been playable. Except in some very certain specific strategic ways if you can get her AI to cooperate. Rosa is a little bit complicated, but I guess in theory, she does give you an option for support and healer in here, which, I mean, really, I think if you are going to run a 3 missile team, you need someone who is not a DPS missile unit at some point, but also, I don't think it's Rosa. Charisse is bad, and Summer Lilith is both old and limited, so that's real unfortunate. Also, Rose is probably not coming back unless we get Pixel Remaster. Again, another one of those Pixel Remaster units is waiting on that kind of thing, so that's real fucking rough for her. And then, honestly, everybody who's left, I really don't have much to say about. I don't even hate them enough to have much to say about them. So we have Axe. This is one of the big drawbacks, I think, to Halloween Lucio. Unfortunately, he's an Axe unit, so his weapon pool is really bad. I mean, there just aren't many Axes in the game. Luckily for Lucio himself, he has access to a really strong signature Axe, and luckily there are 8 Axe-based vision cards out at the moment. There are 2, well, actually, there's only 1 area attack resistance card for them. But there's 2 unit resistance, an area attack, second area attack resistance is coming in the future, and 2 agility cards. So offense and defense, that's often what we like to see. Physical man killer slash, wait, no, not slash resistance, no, slash penetration. That's what I was hoping for. That would be a nice one to get in the future. There are 2 magic cards in here, which is a little bit unfortunate because that really cuts us down to like 6 physical Axe cards, which I guess is kind of like the bare minimum right now. Maybe not the best here, but one of the reasons that Axe is so meh for me is just the unit pool. I mean, even with Lucio and Grifford recently added to the game, I mean, they're both 70 cost units. That's not great. We have a free unit that doesn't even have a limit break in Moraga. We have Yerma, who's just, I think, never been good. We have Summer Kilfei, who I've always wanted to be good, but, well, she hasn't been good since Locke came out, and nobody realized that she was good before Locke came out, so she has never had a time to shine. And then there's Vega. Vega's arguably, I mean, I think is pretty certainly by far the best unit on here, and the closest one to being like, I don't know, tanky in that he has a barrier and ways to keep himself alive. But even he's not great. He's just kind of a brawler these days, so like, I don't know, who's the champion here? And even when you find the champion here, it's Vega. Who the fuck else are you running? Like, are you running Vega, Lucio, and Grifford? I mean, I guess that's okay for like a limited composition if for some reason you have a 240 unit building cost. Sure, that works if you have the vision cards too, and I guess if you have to go down to 220, you could even swap out probably Grifford for Sorrel. But also worth pointing out here that there isn't a lot of support for Lucio as an evade unit with Axe. There's also not a lot of support for Summer Kilfei. She's kind of in the same place, except that she's less evasive by far than Lucio is. It is good for her and for him that they get his VC that's coming out with him. Unfortunately, it's Halloween limited, so it's only going to be available once a year, so you either get it now or you're fucked. That's real unfortunate for both of them. Also, both of them are limited units, and they're probably some of my favorites here. Maybe Axe Evasion could become a... probably not. But it would probably need a second or even third card to really make that work. This is a good start with its newest card, but also this just isn't an evasion element. And as I've said, of the people who are primarily like doing evasion as their thing, it's a tenuous place to be in the meta. While it can work really well on offense if you know how to pick teams particularly well, it can also get housed really easily on defense. And it's hard to, especially as a free-to-play, like invest heavily into a team that can't do both, in my opinion. So moving on to the next, we've got Mace. and then Black Mage, and then Dagger. Mace, Black Mage, and then Dagger. Okay, so Mace is going to be another one of these classes that really struggles because of casting times. The other thing they're going to struggle with is there aren't a lot of maces, and there aren't a lot of great maces in the game. There's also only 8 vision cards for them, and at least a couple of these are physical, which is real unfortunate for them. In fact, there aren't that many magical mace cards, which is real bad because there are no physical mace users. There is a pretty good mace tank, but she's not even really the best tank in the game anymore. She had a very short time to shine, and I would say that she arguably does a bit better on Dark, although she works pretty well on Rainbow. Some of the issues though is that the other mace kind of DPS units that you probably want to run with her break in their own element. I'm looking at you, Queen Macherie, and Soddly, so their breaks wouldn't really benefit anybody but themselves. There are some really interesting and powerful things that both of these characters can do, and they can both also act a bit as supports. But I think a lot of this is really geared towards being supportive or defensive, and I don't think there's enough power here. This is a stubborn team. This is an annoying team, but this is also a very squishy team, so, you know, having a bunch of healers here might not help you the most if you can't keep units alive to be healed. At least Halloween Little Leela, who is getting an upgrade here, which is not a bad one, even though she is a 70 cost unit, and an old one at that, like a first generation 70 cost unit, even though she's one of the best, well, maybe not like the best ever, best anymore, but like by when she came out, like one of the best 70 cost units ever. She's still pretty good now, and full life is definitely very helpful. She also has quite a bit of range on some really big heals, so she can be a pretty good support. Kind of like Ildira with full life and maybe some more damage, which is just a great place to be. That being said, again, there's just not enough power here. It's really too defensive. This needs to be splashed into something else. And I'm really not sure that that type of gameplay is the most efficient. You really have to have a good strategy to make that work. So, like, I don't know what's going on for Mace. And also they have casting times. Like, I'm pretty sure I said that towards the beginning, but casting times really sucks for them. Also, one more note. One of their agility vision cards has gotten stuck. It's the Melnia card, so who knows when we're getting that. It's also your unit resistance card, so right now they just have agility and area resistance on their cards, and oh man, 2 attack percentage cards. RIP. Where is it though? Oh, area resistance, that is on a magical card. That's good. The other agility card is also magical. So thankfully those two are on a magical card. However, the unit resistance and agility card for them is going to be physical. So like half of the high impact status or kind of stat upgrades are going to be on a card that doesn't necessarily benefit the stats, other stats at least, of the team. So that's sad. Having similar issues is Black Mage. Now, thankfully, they do have a pretty big weapon pool. They have 8 cards available to them. Unfortunately, wait, almost all of these are physical. Do they have a magic card? Do they have a magically based card? They have 2. They have 2. One of them's limited, the other one's Greater Demon. So, no cards that actually benefit a Black Mage team. Also, there aren't really powerhouses here. There is a single target powerhouse in Darkfina, but she's also very, very casty, so that's an issue. Lena was almost dead on arrival, and even worse so now that Re-Raise has been devalued by Alaya the Alabaster. Kind of a similar issue for Aerith. She's always had issues, especially with her AI, but also devaluing Re-Raise kind of sucks for her. Gargus. Lemure is also quite a caster, and one of the other units I would really like on here. I guess Gahal is pretty powerful, but Skahall's like a first generation 80 cost unit. It's an absolute anomaly that he's still good as it is. I think everybody is just waiting for something to knock him off. He is in a pretty tenuous position himself. He hangs on by the skin of his teeth, and I'm not sure that he's enough to save this. So, like, oddly enough, the Black Mages don't seem like they are anywhere near the potential of even the Devouts for damage, which is weird because that's supposed to be their thing. And at the same time, they're not necessarily super defensive, and the defenses they do have don't work particularly well, so wow. What are you doing, Black Mages? What are you doing? It's nothing good, really. And then that brings us to the last group, and one of the ones I think about the least, to be honest with you. Like, even less than stuff like guns, which I rated almost offensively, or like bows or books, daggers. These are like ninjas that just couldn't pull it off. I can't really think of a dagger unit that I've ever liked very much for very long. I mean, I guess Locke was pretty good if the entire game didn't build itself to counter him as soon as he came out. Joker was pretty good when he came out, especially for his cost. He stuck around for quite some time, pretty accurate. Similar deal here for Little Leela the Bold, and probably my favorite by far dagger unit. Rissal also kind of dead on arrival. Like, she didn't have friends. She still doesn't have friends. She's kind of like, I mean, she maybe makes the most sense as a dagger unit in that she seems to be able to support evasion, and that's kind of what Dagger wants to do. But here's the thing about evasion. You either go really hard and do it right, or you get hit. Evasion units should not get hit, and unfortunately a lot of the Dagger units here that are evasive get hit too often. To the point where the best dagger units on this list are the two that don't try to evade at all, and that's really going to be Little Leela the Bold and Joker. So maybe there's potential here for like a dark dagger team, but Joker's stuck at 120, so that's just not a good option. That's not getting awakened anytime soon. You're also running Bonero, who's a 90 calls first generation unit, who just, I don't know, she hasn't been good enough for evasion for quite some time. So I don't think that that's really going to work for you. You also don't have cards to support evasion. There's only one agility card going on in this whole menagerie, and it's a magical card, so that's not great. No unit attack resistance, which isn't great for evasion. But even then, there's only one area attack resistance. They're not even keeping up in that respect either. So there's just a lot of problems here. I don't know what team you would build from this. I don't know that some of the potentially better units here when they're getting upgraded. Resnick the Hoppy might be okay into 142, but she's one of those units that, you know, she would be really good. She has a really good kit, looks really good on paper. She's just not evasive enough to make it all work consistently. And that's kind of the story of a lot of these, so I don't know. Definitely E tier in kind of the meh category. And really, just let's go back and take one last overview of all of this. Red Mage and Fist is doing great. Arguably doing better than the best element in the game, which is Lightning right now. Lightning is going to stay on top because of Astrius. Astrius coming is really going to help them out quite a bit. That's also potentially going to be a boon for the Rainbow team that I was telling you about. Forgot to factor Astrius into that. As soon as he comes out, that's going to be like the Rainbow team. The Electrified Water Rainbow team that's probably going to sweep everything. And just Water Tank, 2 Lightning DPSs, beat everybody's ass. Water's also doing pretty well. This is an elemental tier list. B is really the ones that aren't dominant, but they are consistent. You will definitely get points with these guys. They have great matchups against very popular teams and teams that are rated above them, but not all of them, and they don't win all the time, so they're not quite A tier. And then coming into C, this is where we start seeing our job. we're starting to see more of our job teams. Knights are very powerful because they have good DPSs. Same story going for Katana. They can even splash in some magic in a way that Knight has trouble doing. Gloves used to be better, also so did Katana. They're mainly more magical, but they do have some good free units. Greatswords is okay. They're gonna get better with Astrius bringing in a little extra power for them, which they desperately need. Honestly, they might even be D tier. I may have rated them a little bit too highly, but I don't know. Maybe they are still better than most Wind, but maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I should put Greatsword below Wind. I'm not changing this graphic at this point, but next is Spear. Spear has a couple of good units, has a couple of good cards. It's okay, but again, it's still not quite at the level of consistency and power and options and versatility that even the weakest current element, which again, Wind, is at. So kind of hard sell for them. Ninja Blade has a lot of potential for a very specific type of very fast, very mobile evasion team, but I'm not sure the evasion archetype is the best right now, and they're kind of one note. Also, not a great unit pool, only 5 UR units, even though I would say they're all arguably usable in a way that other groups have a little bit less of a consistency with. There's still only 5 of them. It's not great. Next up is going to be Warrior. Warriors are way too defensive. They're just way too defensive. And then you have Devouts. Devouts get their skill activations canceled too easily, although they do have a good weapon pool to select from, and they do have good DPS units compared to other casters. This is the much more damaging caster group. Axes have a bad weapon pool, but also a really bad pool of units. The VCs are okay, but like, who are you going to use on that team? Maces are probably better splashed into other things. Their abilities are cancelable, which is unfortunate for them. Also, there aren't really many magical mace cards, unfortunately. Then you get Black Mage. Black Mage just doesn't have the offense. It is very slow and defensive and just not what you want. And then Dagger feels like failed evasion, honestly. Like, it's Ninja Blade, but not as good at doing what it does. Books, they just need more jobs, more cards, more options, more versatility, more champions. Gunners just need their whole mechanics reworked. We need a lot of more like specialized gunners or magic gunners or stuff like that that can defy the general rule set for gunners. Maybe even bigger range or bigger maps would help them, but there's just a lot of structural disadvantages for them. And I think that maybe ultimately bows have more potential, but they need both new units and new vision cards probably more than anything else on the board. So even though I think that they might have a little bit of an advantage over, well, gunners at least, that don't mean a hill of beans when you just have nothing to play, and they have nothing to play. And again, Missile just isn't great right now. It's very unfortunate, and somehow they are just the worst end of the stick. So, too bad if you are someone who's been hoping for good bow. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen. So, with all of that being said, if you appreciate this look at the meta, and I mean, I've never really seen anybody do a tier list quite like this before. Because of that, I'm really curious if you think I got it right, think I got it wrong. I would also like to know if you are running any of these teams, because, I feel like it's really hard to specialize in this way. It's kind of expensive. You got to get a lot of vision cards, and you've got to start getting them before. You've got to really, set your feet, plant your feet, and just hope the future happens the way you want it to. Because by the time these things are viable, if you haven't collected the vision cards, you might not be able to use them in time. You know, like, it's really hard to plan for and plan around. But at the same time, I mean, it's been easy to see that Strike and Red Mage were going to do good, so maybe it'll be easy to plan for the next truly good job class to kind of rise above the other elements. But I feel like the elements are kind of clustered right now, new units accepted, so there is a lot of potential to kind of leapfrog a lot of the current elements into the top and get into A or S tier with just a couple good plays or a couple good units and VCs. But I'm not sure that any of that's going to be happening super soon. Looking at what's coming in the future, I don't think there's going to be too many big shakeups, and if there are, I've already kind of factored them into this list. So I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching. Please like the video. There's a little like button down there. Make sure it's clicked, turns black, all that stuff. That's great. Thank you for liking. I appreciate it. I don't know what it's like on other platforms, but apparently here on YouTube you have to remind people to do that. So I mean, you did it, right? Because I really need your help, man. Like, help out the channel, please. Liking is a big deal. Also, subscribe so that you see more content like this and kind of give my channel a boost. And if you're still trying to give it a little bit of a bump, leave a comment. Tell me about the teams that you're building. Tell me what you think I got wrong. I think we could probably talk about that for the next week in the comments if you want to. Also, because I've been doing a lot of like recap style videos recently, like big looks at the meta, at the units, at the elements, at the jobs, weapons, all that stuff, I'm going to be, maybe in about a week, scanning through a lot of the comments on those and doing a comment response video. So if you want to be in the comment response video, if you want your specific questions answered, drop them in the comments of this video and I'll get to it within about a week, I want to say. But also, while you're scrolling down to the comments, open up that description, click on that Linktree link. That's going to lead you to all other parts of the Jackie Fox Media Empire. On Fox Talks After Dark later this month, I'm going to be doing a video on the class differences between vampires and zombies. I mean, vampires are your ultimate aristocrats and zombies are your ultimate every man could become a zombie, essentially. But there's a lot more to it than that, and it goes a lot deeper, and the history of both of these things is fascinating and interesting and takes a lot of weird twists and turns that even I wasn't expecting, even my horror-loving girlfriend wasn't expecting. She's going to be joining me on the podcast, so that's going to be one to watch. If you want some spooky fun this October, be sure to tune in to the Fox Talks After Dark podcast. I might even be publishing that particular episode because it'll be a little bit more like YouTube guidelines friendly than some of Fox Talks After Dark. I might be uploading that onto YouTube as a video as well, so maybe you can watch that on the Politically Non-Binary channel, which is my main and like spicier, hot takier YouTube channel. If you want to check that out, I do occasionally post videos to it, nowhere near the frequency that I do for this channel, but I also put a bit more effort into them, so a little bit of a trade-off there. You know, it's one of those channels where you might wait a couple months for something to drop, but then it's a banger. So if you want to see the bangers, go over to that channel. I'll be dropping bangers every once in a while. Thank you for watching, and with all that being said, I'll see you in the next one.